What do you think of when you think Hal Jordan? Most of you would think of Green Lantern. If you're a bit deeper into the lore, you might think of Parallax. Hal Jordan has a mental break after Coast City gets blown up. He recreates it using his ring, but the Guardians reprimand him. This tips Hal over the edge. He tries to steal the power of the Lantern battery. His fellow Green Lanterns try to stop him, so Hal kills them and takes their rings. The Guardians recruit Sinestro as a last-ditch effort to stop him, but Hal kills him too and becomes Parallax. Hal would then remain as Parallax for a couple of years, facing the new Lantern, Kyle Rayner, in a battle a couple of times, attempting to erase the entire universe during Zero Hour and remake it in his image, and after finally realizing how far he's gone, sacrificing himself to protect Earth from the Sun Eater during Final Night. To a lot of people, that's where Hal's story ends. He remains dead until 2004, where he's resurrected in the miniseries Green Lantern Rebirth, written by Jeff Johns. But what really happened between Final Night and Rebirth? In 1999, 3 years after Hal Jordan's death, up-and-coming writer Jeff Johns would write DC's next big event, Day of Judgment. During that event, the Spirit of Vengeance, otherwise known as the Spectre, was taken over by the angel Asmodel, who used it to wreak havoc. Towards the end of the series, Hal Jordan reappeared as a spirit and convinced the Spirit of Vengeance to leave Asmodel and join with him, becoming the new Spectre. It's funny that Johns introduced this concept because he would later be the one to undo it as well. For the record, I'm not a fan of Green Lantern Rebirth, for reasons I'll get into later. For the next 2 years, Hal Jordan made guest appearances in Justice League and Green Lantern as the Spectre until 2001, when DC decided it was time for him to star in a series of his own again. Since his introduction, the Spectre has normally starred in his own series, so a new reboot wasn't out of the ordinary. However, this time things were very different. This time it starred Hal Jordan as the Spectre, which immediately set it apart from any other Spectre series before it. This wasn't just a Spectre series, or a Green Lantern series. It was both. JM DeMatteis, known for his work on Spider-Man, Justice League, and Dr. Fate, was tasked with writing the new series alongside artists Ryan Sook and Norm Breyfogle. Together, they would craft the greatest characterization of Hal Jordan to ever grace a comic book. Yep, I said it. This book did a lot more for Hal Jordan as a character than any other book he's starred in since, including Jeff Johns' Green Lantern. Hal Jordan's The Spectre is a tale of redemption. The series dives heavily into Hal Jordan's psyche and shows us, the reader, his journey dealing with his guilt and grief over the horrible things he did as Parallax. Sacrificing himself was only the first step. It still wasn't enough to alleviate him of the pain and guilt still clawing at him inside. But now he was the Spectre, and to Hal, this was his chance to finally make up for everything he's done. He just had one problem. The Spirit of Vengeance is called that for a reason. It seeks vengeance on anyone it deems deserves it, often leading to death. Hal Jordan is against vengeance and killing, especially after everything he's done. So he sets out to do the one thing nobody has ever succeeded in doing: changing the Spectre from a spirit of vengeance to a spirit of justice. No longer killing those who deserve its wrath, and instead using its power to help them find a better path. A large part of this series deals with the relationship between Hal Jordan, the Spectre, and their ideals of justice clashing. Does Hal Jordan succeed? You'll have to read it and find out. As the Spectre, Hal Jordan deals with alternate dimensions, magic, time travel, all in search for the redemption of his soul. Every issue serves as a lesson for Hal Jordan that teaches him more about himself. There's an issue where he meets Santa Claus. Seriously, you have to read this series, it's incredible. Right now, it's probably sounding like this is just a Spectre series that stars Hal Jordan, so let's get into the Green Lantern side. Hal Jordan is in a rough place inside. He doesn't trust that he even has the will to be a hero anymore, even if he tried. he needs a guide to help him get there, the spirit of someone he trusts. Abin Sur. The same Abin Sur who crash-landed on Earth, who passed his ring onto Hal. This series gives us a long-awaited reunion of these two characters as Abin helps Hal on his journey to redemption. And we learn a lot more about Abin Sur in this series than we do from later things like Secret Origin. This series deals with where Abin came from and what happened after he died. How did the ones he loved move on without him? All of that is answered in this series. The series also deals with Hal Jordan's personal life and the lives of those he loved. What happened to Carol Danvers after Hal died? Did she move on and find someone new? This series answers that. What happened to Sinestro after his death by the hands of Hal Jordan? This series explores that too in a 3-part arc involving Sinestro's resurrection and Hal Jordan facing the wrath of his greatest nemesis. These aren't the story arcs I want to talk about though. The one I want to talk about is Helen Jordan. From this point forward, I'm going to talk about a lot of spoilers, including the ending. So if you want to read this series and you don't want spoilers, come back and watch this afterward. Helen Jordan is the daughter of Jack and Jan Jordan and the niece of Hal and Jim Jordan. During the series, Jack is the only remaining Jordan brother. Hal died during Final Night, and Jim died during Coast City's destruction. Jack believes Hal is still alive after supposedly seeing him at a local park, so he and Carol both search for Hal Jordan together. Hal wants to mend his relationship with his brother. Jack has a lot of resentment towards Hal. Their mother never wanted Hal to follow in his father's footsteps as an Air Force pilot. Hal did anyway. She later died, and Jack believed Hal's actions shortened her life. But with all the time that's passed since Hal's death, Jack has forgiven him and is elated when Hal appears to him and his daughter Helen. However, Jan still bears a grudge against Hal and is in disbelief that Hal is still around. Once Hal leaves, Jack, Jan, and Helen's lives return to normal. For now. Enter Stigmonus, a being who describes himself as the worst of humanity's heart, who revels in causing chaos and ruining the lives of others. He is a sworn enemy of the Spectre, and he decides to take this opportunity to ruin Hal Jordan's life for his own pleasure. He's basically the Spectre's version of the Joker, but if Joker had reality warping abilities that let him do pretty much whatever he wanted. Stigmonus kidnaps Helen Jordan and tries to manipulate her into becoming his follower. He shows her his amazing reality warping abilities and promises to teach them to her. This is all a ploy to send Helen down a dark path and ruin her life, and he taunts Hal every step of the way, showing him possible futures where Helen becomes a drug addict and dies. Obviously, this enrages Hal and he heads off in search of where Helen is being held captive. Meanwhile, Jack and Jan discover that Helen has gone missing and head off in search of her as well. Hal doesn't know about this. He eventually finds Helen and saves her from Stigmonus. Believing it to be over, Hal and Helen then head off to return to her parents. But it's not over. At that very moment, Jack and Jan are still searching for Helen, driving through a heavy storm. That's when Stigmonus appears in front of their car, causing a crash that lands the both of them in hospital. Because he is determined to ruin Helen's life just to spite Hal. Hal becomes distraught when he learns the horrible news. The first thing he does is head straight to the hospital where Jack and Jan are on life support and attempt to use his powers to bring them back. But it's too late. They're both gone. And now Hal has the hard job of breaking the news to Helen. When he does, she's in denial. She can't believe her parents are gone. She won't believe it. So Hal decides to give her the closure she needs and takes her to heaven. He reunites Helen with her parents and they say their goodbyes to one another. Helen returns to Hal and he promises her that he will never leave her and that he will always love her. But because he's busy with his duties as the Spectre, Hal doesn't have much time to spend with Helen, so he decides to hire a nanny to look after her named Materna Minix, a mysterious woman with space warping abilities. Materna and Helen spend a lot of time together. Materna shows Helen all sorts of dimensions, parts of the universe, teaching her about the cosmos and all that kind of stuff. And as they spend time together, she also discovers that Helen is developing powers of her own. She starts to put the pieces together and realizes that Helen's destiny is to be with Hal and become a grand hero or something, using her abilities for good, and that being with Hal would guide her to that destiny. But what she doesn't know is that Hal is planning on sending Helen away to live somewhere else because he doesn't feel worthy of being her father and looking after her, because he doesn't have time and he's too busy being the Spectre, and he just doesn't have enough belief in himself. She finds this out from Helen after Hal tucks her into bed one night and pretty much says to her that he is going to be taking her to a home where she can live happily and that she doesn't need him, but he doesn't realize that she just wants to be with him. And she tells Materna this, and Materna is like, oh, he thinks he's going to abandon you? Not if I have anything to say about it. So she heads off to confront Hal, calling him stupid and idiotic for trying to abandon his niece, especially knowing the future that she's supposed to have, the destiny that she is supposed to fulfill, and that she can only fulfill that destiny if she's by his side. And Hal gets so mad that he tells Materna to stop. This is the first time that he ever cuts her off and is like, you listen to me, I'm saying no. She can't live with me, she has to live with somebody else. I'm making the decisions here. And all Materna can really say to that is that she just hopes Hal will make the right choice. Especially if he cares about Helen as much as he says he does. Hal drops Helen off at her new home, and she is understandably very upset at this, and basically tells Hal, if you're going to abandon me, I want nothing to do with you, go away, I hate you. And she just runs straight into the house, and this just hits Hal straight into the heart. And that's when he begins to rethink his choice, because he just hates seeing Helen so mad at him, and he really does want to have a life with Helen as his niece. This is when he realizes that he does want to look after Helen and he does want to live with Helen. He finally gains the courage to admit that. So he goes back to the house, he grabs Helen, and the two fly away together to begin their new life as a family. And that's where the Spectre series ends. A happy ending for Hal Jordan and Helen Jordan as they find this new family within each other. Hal Jordan has gone on this journey where he believes that he's not willing to be a father or worthy to be a father figure to Helen, and by the end of the series he discovers that he can do it and that he wants to do it. He wants to be Helen's father, and so he adopts her. It's incredible. It's such a good ending. It's such a good way to close off this character arc and open up all sorts of opportunities in the future for these two characters. Now, Green Lantern Rebirth, the reboot of Green Lantern, where Hal Jordan became Green Lantern again, takes place immediately after this. I said earlier that I'm not a fan of it, and here's the reason why. Green Lantern Rebirth pretty much ignores Hal Jordan's Spectre series entirely. It undoes all of Hal's work converting the Spectre into a spirit of justice by inexplicably making it a vengeance-seeking being again. It completely ignores the final confrontation Hal has with Parallax, and it retcons Sinestro's entire history since his death at the hands of Hal Jordan. It reveals that Hal Jordan didn't kill the real Sinestro, he killed a copy, and the version seen in the Spectre series was also a copy, complete and utter garbage bullshit retcon. But the worst offense of Green Lantern Rebirth was that it ignores the ending of the Spectre, specifically Helen Jordan. She's nowhere to be seen. No mention, nothing. Just poof. Gone. All because Johns didn't want Hal to be saddled with a kid. He also didn't want Hal to be the mature character he'd grown into during the series and regressed him back into being a maverick type of character. Helen would remain gone for years until Grant Morrison brought her back in one of their Green Lantern annuals in 2018. That's 14 years she went missing. It really pissed me off when I finished the Spectre and found that it was ignored, and if it were up to me, Helen would return to Hal's life and be a main part of the series again. Because I love the dynamic between the two characters. I love the idea of Hal Jordan growing into becoming a father figure for his orphaned niece, and helping her learn how to use her new abilities, which haven't been brought up since she returned. There's so much potential when it comes to those two characters, and the growth that Hal can go through. Right now, he's stagnant as a character. Ever since his introduction back in 2005, his reintroduction as Green Lantern, Hal Jordan hasn't really grown much as a character. He's still hopelessly single, in khaki, and he acts like one of those middle-aged guys who still thinks that they're in their 20s or early 30s. At this point in time within the DC universe, Hal Jordan is approaching middle age. He's one of the older characters in the DC universe, and yet he doesn't act his age. He's still immature a lot of the time, and I don't think it was worth losing all of the character development that he had gained throughout the 90s and early 2000s during his periods as Parallax and the Spectre. I love Hal Jordan's The Spectre. It's such an incredible series, and if you're a fan of Hal Jordan, I highly recommend checking it out. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next week. Have a good one.